David Leadbetter, Michelle Wie's longtime coach, once warned her about something that had nothing to do with her golf swing. He wasn't talking about her grip or her stance. He was talking about her life. "You don't want an injury to affect the rest of your life," he told her. He turned out to be right, almost word for word. But when she still had time to listen, she didn't. Wie was never just another junior golfer with a scholarship offer and a state title. She was 10 years old when she became the youngest player ever to qualify for a USGA Amateur Championship. She was 13 when she made the cut at a major, a record at the time. At 14, she teed it up against the men at the Sony Open on the PGA Tour and shot a 68, still the lowest round ever posted by a woman in a PGA Tour event, beating dozens of the men in the field. Nike signed her before she'd even finished high school. People weren't just watching her golf, they were watching to see if she'd become the female Tiger Woods. Her breakthrough came in 2014, when she finally won the US Women's Open, the major everyone had been waiting for since she was a teenager. It should have been the start of a long run near the top of the sport. Instead, within months, her wrist started giving her trouble, and the pain never really went away. That wrist pain is what this whole story is really about. Leadbetter had coached Wie since she was a kid. He wasn't some swing guru flown in for a few lessons. He'd watched her grow up on the range. So, when he told her, after years of seeing her up close, that she didn't want to still be dealing with that wrist pain at 40, it wasn't a generic line from a stranger. It came from someone who'd spent over a decade watching exactly how hard she pushed herself. That warning came in 2019, during a stretch where Wie's body had basically stopped cooperating with her career. She'd iced her wrist 15 minutes into a round. She'd been in tears after a bad finish, and Leadbetter, who rarely minced words about her, laid it out plainly to reporters. He said, "She has a life outside of golf. She doesn't want to be 40 years old and have the worst arthritis in her wrists and sort of be incapacitated. You have to think of life going forward." He wasn't worried about her scorecard. He was worried about what her body would feel like 20 years down the line. This wasn't even the first time he'd tried to warn her. Years before that 2019 warning, when Wie was still a teenager, Leadbetter had already been pushing her to narrow her stance, to take some of the torque out of her swing, to build something that wouldn't tear her body apart over time. She resisted. In 2015, after a stress reaction in her finger forced her out of tournaments for weeks, Wie admitted it herself. She said, "Ever since I was 13, he's been trying to get me to narrow my stance. I guess I must be the most stubborn person in the entire world." So, by the time Leadbetter delivered that 2019 warning about her whole life, he wasn't starting a new argument. He was restating one he'd been having with her for years. And in between, the injuries never really stopped long enough for anyone to forget about them. A stress reaction in her finger cost her nearly 2 months in 2014. Hip, knee, and ankle problems followed in 2015. A neck injury forced her out of a tournament the year after that, bad enough that she needed a brace. By 2018, her wrist had deteriorated to the point that doctors told her they couldn't safely give her any more cortisone shots, so she switched to collagen injections just to keep competing. Every one of those was its own small headline. Stacked together, they told a much bigger story than any single injury ever could. And it wasn't just Leadbetter anymore. Other players were starting to say the same thing publicly. Stacy Lewis, a former world #1 who'd played alongside Wie for years, put it plainly. Lewis said, "Over the past few years, she has rushed back from a lot of injuries, and it's led to more." Lewis wasn't taking a shot at Wie. She'd spent years in the same locker room watching the same cycle play out, and she finally said out loud what everyone already knew. Not every player framed it the same way. Lydia Ko, who played alongside Michelle Wie that same week in 2019, said something gentler. "Clearly, she loves the game and she's passionate about it," Ko said. Both things were true at once. The passion Coe and Leadbetter both admired was the exact same instinct pulling Wie back onto the course before she'd actually healed. So the warning was everywhere. Her coach saw it, her peers saw it, even when they described it kindly. Even her own body kept telling her the same thing, over and over, in the form of another setback. Which raises the obvious question. If everyone around her could see it coming, why couldn't she stop it? The answer isn't that she didn't believe them, it's that believing them wasn't enough. Years later, we talked about what was actually going through her head during all those comebacks. She said that when she was coming up, nobody really talked about pain or limits. What got talked about instead was toughness, she said. What was talked about was having a champion mindset, being strong, being a warrior. That included never breaking. That included never resting. That included laser-focused. So in my mind, seeing that, I felt like to be a champion golfer, I had to have that mindset. I had to have that mindset that never broke, never complained. No swing change could fix that part of it. Leadbetter could get her to protect her wrists. He couldn't make it feel okay to admit they hurt in the first place. So she hit it instead. Wie later said, "I remember not telling the media really honest answers about my injuries, kind of hiding it, just because I didn't want to feel weak." Think about what that means in practice. Every time a reporter asked how she was feeling and she gave the confident answer instead of the honest one, she wasn't just managing her image. She was talking herself back onto the course before she was ready, because admitting otherwise felt like failing. Leadbetter wasn't really up against her stubbornness. He was up against an identity she'd built for herself, one that didn't leave room for admitting pain. He wanted to protect her future. She just wanted to keep being who everyone expected her to be. So where did that pressure actually come from? It started years earlier, in a gym, when she was still a kid. Wie has since said her early training was modeled almost entirely on programs built for grown men preparing for professional sports, not a teenage girl whose body was still developing. She was doing power cleans at 15. She was swinging an extra thick 46-inch driver shaft as hard as she could, with, in her own words, absolutely zero body strength to control the deceleration. She said, "I was training like a man who was about to play professional sports, which is so different. I would have power cleans when I was 15. Like, why? Why was I ever doing that?" That's what Leadbetter was really up against. Years of conditioning, physical and mental, that had already been built into her long before he ever got the chance to change it. Whatever the root cause, the toll kept adding up. Wrist surgery in 2007, another operation in 2018, arthritis settling into both wrists before she'd even turned 30. Missed cuts, withdrawals, comebacks that lasted a few tournaments before the same pain came back. In June of 2022, Wie finally said what her body had been telling her for years. She announced she was stepping away from full-time competition. 2023 U.S. Women's Open set as her farewell. Leadbetter had been right the whole time. Not in some vague way, either. He'd used almost those exact words back in 2019. An injury did follow her, and it did affect the rest of her career, if not her whole life. He saw it coming years in advance, and he told her straight to her face. She finished her career with 5 LPGA titles and 1 major, a resume that most golfers would be thrilled with and that still felt, to a lot of people watching, like a fraction of what she was capable of. That gap between what she achieved and what she was expected to achieve isn't really about talent. It's about a body that kept sending signals a young athlete had been taught not to pay attention to. Plenty of coaches end up being right about plenty of things. What makes this one different is what got in the way of it mattering. Wie heard Leadbetter's warning clearly. She just couldn't act on it, because the sport had taught her that admitting she was hurt wasn't something a champion was allowed to do. Leadbetter wasn't wrong about Michelle Wie. He was just talking to someone who wasn't allowed to listen yet.